Hi, everyone. I'm Alyssa Gershowitz, editor-in-chief of the Hornbook, and I'm thrilled to welcome you to our first ever live virtual Boston Globe Hornbook Awards ceremony. The Boston Globe Hornbook Awards were founded in 1967 to help further our mission of blowing the horn for fine books for young people. The Hornbook itself was founded in 1924, making next year our centennial anniversary. And we're so happy to be kicking off that year-long celebration a little bit early with this wonderful event. As always, I'd like to thank the Boston Globe and the Globe Foundation for their continued support, our longtime host at Simmons University and the Center for the Study of Children's Literature, and most especially to this year's judges, Committee Chair Erica Marks, Senior Director of Outreach and Programming at Cleveland Public Library, Cleveland, Ohio, Martha Paravano, contributing editor to the Hornbook, and Roger Sutton, editor-in-chief emeritus for the Hornbook. We'll drop a link in the chat to our webpage, hbook.com, where you can find all of the honorees videos, as well as an interview with this year's judges done by the Boston Globe acting books editor, Francie Lynn, and winners from previous years. As always, the winners and honorees speeches will appear in print in the January-February 2024 Hornbook magazine, kicking off our centennial year. Please subscribe if you haven't already. It'll be a great year. Without further ado, please welcome our 2023 Boston Globe Hornbook Award winners. Angeline Woolley, winner in the fiction and poetry category for Warrior Girl Unearthed, published by Henry Holt Books for Young Readers. Jarrett J. Krasaska, winner in the nonfiction category for Sunshine, published by Graphics Scholastic. And Jack Wong, winner in the picture book category for When You Can Swim, published by Orchard Scholastic. They will be reading their acceptance speeches, and then we'll have time for discussion and audience Q&A. Angeline, we'll start with you.
Bonjour, Anine. Hello. Angeline Woolley, Miskwa Mukwakwe Nadishnakas, Mukwa Dodam, Bawating Indonjaba, Chimagwech. Hello, everyone. I'm Angeline Woolley. I'm Bear Clan, and I'm from Sault Ste. Marie, Michigan, the place of the Rapids. I am honored, so honored, to receive the Boston Globe Hornbook Award in fiction for Warrior Girl Unearthed. Chimagwech to readers everywhere, and especially to judges Martha Paravano, Roger Sutton, and chairperson Erica Marks. Every sophomore novel is a triumph, and mine would not have been possible without my Holt Books for Young Readers editor, Jess Harold, and the entire team at Macmillan Children's Publishing Group. Miigwech to the Boston Globe and the Hornbook magazine for also recognizing Promise Boys by Nick Brooks and When Clouds Touch Us by Tenhai Lai. I pitched Warrior Girl Unearthed as Indigenous Lara Croft, but instead of raiding tombs, 16-year-old Perry raids museums and private collections to retrieve stolen ancestral remains and sacred items that do not belong there. Perry is a reluctant tribal museum intern accompanying her supervisor to a repatriations negotiating meeting at a local college museum. She is shown the human remains of the warrior girl, which is based on an actual ancestor, a young woman buried with a flint blade and whose adolescent bones showed evidence of healed knife wounds, indicating that she was recognized as a protector of her people. Upon learning about the institution's decades of delaying tactics to avoid complying with the Native American Graves Protection and Repatriation Act, known as NAGPRA, Harry decides to take matters into her own hands and return the warrior girl to her homeland. Warrior Girl Unearthed is about the ownership of Indigenous bodies, both past and present. It's also about teens experiencing the call to action and its consequences, what makes someone a warrior for their community, and how one voice can change everything. I'd like to share a real-life example of how one voice can make a difference. I'm speaking to you this evening from Ann Arbor, Michigan, home of the University of Michigan. In 2007, the Saginaw Chippewa Indian tribe, on behalf of a coalition of all tribes in Michigan, made a repatriation claim for 405 ancestors, backed by data including archaeological evidence, oral histories, and traditional knowledge, which supported the cultural affiliation to modern Anishinaabeg tribes. The claim was unilaterally dismissed by the university, even though the university had never consulted with any Michigan tribe before deeming these ancestral remains culturally unidentifiable. The coalition of tribes, along with allies both on and off campus, protested the decision, even holding a drum in during exam week. A citizen from the Saginaw Chippewa Indian tribe was given 5 minutes to address university regents at a board meeting. That citizen, Joseph Samek, said, "Our ancestors' bodies have been written on with markers and pens, laid out in cardboard boxes, on metal shelves. We ask, would you want your grandmothers and grandfathers to be treated in this way? Today, I'm here to inform you that we will not stand idly by and condone this treatment, nor will we allow our research and perspective to be diminished. We are the direct descendants of the ancestors who lived on this land before your arrival, and we are united on this issue. In the spirit of NAGPRA, we urge you to do the right thing, restore dignity to our ancestors and to your institution." One voice, and finally, one person listened. One regent, Catherine White, urged her fellow regents to change the university's approach to NAGPRA. The University of Michigan is now regarded as the gold standard for NAGPRA. They committed to transparency and demonstrated their commitment with a consultation-first approach that codified consultation as the first response to a request to repatriate. As I completed my final edits on Warrior Girl Unearthed, the National Park Service issued a program report showing that after 3 decades since NAGPRA became law in 1990, there are still more ancestors remaining in collections than have been returned via the process. I dedicated my book to the 108,328 ancestors still in these collections and to those working to bring them home. I'd like to expand this dedication to the young readers touched by books like mine, like those recognized tonight. They are moved to take action, to give voice to the causes they are passionate about. Mazinai again, mino mishke kiwin awin. Books are good medicine. Stories are powerful. Aho, miigwech.
Thank you so much, Angeline. Everyone should read Warrior Girl Unearthed and its companion book, Firekeeper's Daughter, which was also absolutely wonderful. Next, we will hear from Jarrett J. Krasowska about Sunshine.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you so much. And I can't start without thanking Angeline for those beautiful and inspiring words. Time and chance have profoundly impacted my life. As a toddler, I was deeply fortunate to have my grandparents, Joseph and Shirley, gain legal custody of me when my mother could no longer provide adequate care. From elementary school all the way through high school, I serendipitously was placed in the classrooms of so many teachers during pivotal moments of my life. But the most significant example of time and chance affecting the trajectory from childhood to adulthood came when a high school teacher pulled my name from a hat in the spring of 1994. Community service was central to the culture at my high school. The centerpiece of that community service was the high school's partnership with Camp Sunshine, a therapeutic camp in Maine that served families dealing with pediatric cancer. Given the program's popularity among the student body, far more students attended that first after-school informational meeting that could have been chosen to serve as volunteer counselors at the selected camp sessions. The faculty advisors, they did what they thought was most fair. They had the gathered students write their names down for placement in a hat, and my name was one of the few chosen to travel to Maine and volunteer at the storied program. From there, chance would further play its game. The teachers assigned me to the session scheduled for the last week of that September. From there, I, along with my hodgepodge group of classmates, I was assigned at random to program stations along with my classmates. Further, we were each assigned a family to sit with during meals. Now, at 16, I was a jaded and angry teenager who was processing the trauma of his mother's addiction. And I was then thrust into this concept of service, thereby forced to think beyond myself and meaningfully linked me to the greater world around me. I can confidently tell you that I would not have grown into the adult I am without this eye-opening work. An odd arithmetic is associated with serving others. A lesson I learned when volunteering at Camp Sunshine: the more you give of yourself to others, the more you get out of it. My favorite people have always shared this sentiment and lived with the mission of service as central to the purpose in life. While I used to surround myself with co-counselors who led groups of campers from activity to activity in the picturesque wilderness of camp, today, I am blessed to be working alongside colleagues spread far and wide and in various settings. The mission is very similar: to provide caring respite for young people navigating challenging times. Through the pages of books, authors offer escapism. Librarians and booksellers give a sense of community. And editors act like the camp's group leaders, ensuring everything is in place so the camp can hum along smoothly. Therapeutic camps help make kids feel less alone as they connect with peers who are experiencing similar plights. And a reader can share a similar feeling when they see their experience reflected back to them in the pages of a book. Back in my camp days, families often told me that their children lived to get back to camp the following summer. And today, I often hear from readers who report that books have saved their lives. And I see these bibliotherapeutic moments when invited into schools and libraries and witness them via the social media posts I see from educators daily. It was a gift for me to dig deep into my memories and create Sunshine, how one camp taught me about life, death, and hope. To write a memoir is to relive past experiences for days on end. And while there are so many heavy and emotionally fraught experiences I have relayed in this book, I also revisited so many happy moments. I got to once again spend time with Eric, Diego, and so many of the campers that I befriended at Camp Sunshine. Thank you to David Levithan, my editor, friend, and mentor, for recognizing that this camp story was too big to be a chapter in Hey Kiddo. David quickly edited out the Camp Sunshine chapter of my first memoir because this story needed its own room. It was a story that needed a spotlight all its own. And thank you, too, for the entire team at Scholastic for supporting Sunshine, both during the book's creation and its launch into the world. Thank you to my wife, Gina, who I met by chance at a Cinco de Mayo party that I begrudgingly attended, for believing in me and having the patience with the ups and downs of this book industry. Time and chance gave the two of us 3 wonderful children, Zoe, Lucia, and Xavier. I am grateful for their understanding when my book life takes me away from our daily family life. My profound gratitude to the Boston Globe Hornbook Awards Committee for recognizing Sunshine with a nonfiction award. I'm thankful for your hard work in assessing all the titles, and I realize how fortunate I am that time and chance put you all in a committee together for the 2023 selections. There is power in being remembered after we leave this earth. I'm so thankful that I could share these camp memories through the written word and the drawn illustration. These campers I befriended all those years ago are always in my thoughts, and I'm proud to have empowered them by sharing these stories with you. Thank you to the readers who revisited these camp moments with me, who turn the page and read about these experiences. Thank you to their educators, both in the classroom and in the library, who make my work available to them. Now, while it shouldn't be an act of courage to place a book on a shelf, in this modern era, it is an act of courageous love. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jarrett. Sunshine. And absolutely read Hey Kiddo. I have to share that this is a cover of the Hornbook magazine from May, June 2020 that Jarrett illustrated for us with a special holdout. A little sneak peek, a little preview. It's customary for usually the picture book award winner of Boston Globe Hornbook to illustrate the January, February issue of the next year. And that person is Jack Wong, and he will be illustrating the January, February Hornbook magazine cover. Jack, would you talk to us, please, about When You Can Swim?
Thank you, Alyssa. Okay. Thank you to the Hornbook, the Boston Globe, and the Awards Selection Committee for this tremendous honor. And to Jarrett and Angeline for their extraordinary work, and just now their words. I didn't set out to write a book about swimming. Its seeds were planted over a particular period of time, namely the spring and summer of 2020, when everything around me seemed newly foreign and not to be taken for granted. I took particular solace in nature, collecting observations and imagery whenever I could be out there. I felt especially attuned to the rhythms of water, and my fascination with its many forms and phenomena became the basis for this book. Now, to say writing a book without intending to can, in one sense, be taken as a badge of honor. It's suspiciously close to self-congratulations for having been a conduit for some divine inspiration. But in another sense, I share to express real feelings of surprise and uncertainty about the work I made. I am not a particularly strong swimmer, nor someone who has thought much about rallying others to swim. Like any work of fiction, I borrowed the experiences and perspectives and feelings of others to populate the voices and bodies you see on the pages. So perhaps it's natural that I've also needed to borrow the insights of others to understand the final result for myself. That process has been a delightful one, and I'd like to share 3 of those insights with you today. Firstly, it was well after When You Can Swim had been written and acquired and revised and illustrated and designed and produced and released that, rubbing shoulders at a conference event with my publisher at Scholastic, Liza Baker, she told me for the first time, what we liked from the start was that when you can swim is not if you can swim. Sometimes an artist can be so ignorant to the particular success of their choices because the alternative never even crossed their mind as a possibility. Indeed, the word when is accurate to the ethos of the book as I intended. The many aspects of representation in the book exist, for instance, because I wanted as many readers as possible to see their potential future selves within its pages. But that particular word, when, could I really say I consciously made this choice of syntax, designed it to carry within itself the weight of something akin to a moral declaration? It would be more accurate to say that when the word the word when, arrived on the page as a result of my excitement and even a good dose of impatience for the future to manifest. It's true that the words of this book are ostensibly narrated very calmly by an encouraging adult figure towards a tentative child. But when I read it, there's an alternate version that sometimes plays in my mind's ear. For a long time, I couldn't quite put my finger on what that alternate version is. But when we recorded the audiobook, I was delighted to find that actor Shannon Tayo had uncannily channeled an undercurrent of that out loud. And I can now affectionately identify it as the energy of a second grader explaining an animated movie. When you can swim? So my thanks go first to everyone who embraced When You Can Swim for everything I knew it was, and a few more things I didn't yet know it could be. This includes my formidable editorial and art team, Andrea Davis Pinkney, Patty Ann Harris, Doan Boo, and Jennifer Thompson, my flight companions in publicity, Elizabeth Ferrari, Guy Filippone, and Nicole Kritikos, and the entire family at Scholastic invoked by the collective we in Liza's quote, too richly numerous to name, many of whom, by expressing their individual connections to the book during the initial acquisitions process, were directly responsible for this story finding its spiritual home. The same gratitude goes to my tireless agent, Wendy Gu, and her colleagues at Sanford J. Greenberger Associates, to fellow writers Shante Grant and Sarah Heisey-Krabiel, who materially guided and changed the direction of this text. And before all that, to the many friends and family members, especially my wife, Ainsley Cunningham, who inspired the scenes in the story and inspired me to work on the book. Okay, secondly, a weight that I'd been carrying with me for many months leading up to the release of When You Can Swim was lightened when Lisa McMullen, co-founder of St. Louis-based Swim On Foundation, which stands for Safer Waters in Memory of Nicholas, wrote to me about the book. The weight that I had been feeling up until then was this. Out of all the matters of representation present in the book, representing a safe experience around water loomed for me the largest. How I had chosen to address this was to model positive, responsible, and communally supportive behaviors in pictures as a visual complement that counterbalanced without precluding the sometimes daring play suggested in the words. But I also had the luxury of doing this on faith. I do not happen to have children of my own or young swimmers in my charge. And so I fretted at the possibility that someone without that luxury may find that I had not done nearly enough. Lisa had written to say that When You Can Swim was different from any other children's book she had read about water safety. By holding out an enchanting promise of the water without emphasizing its hardships, it worked on encouraging a child's desire to learn to swim first. The message was an affirmation of an all carrot, no stick approach to writing for children. And since receiving Lisa's words, I have become ever more sensitive to the fact that sticks, that is to say, boundaries and cautions and even conflict, are not always successful in a book because the appropriate boundaries and cautions and conflicts each reader may need to see vary upon their individual context and development. What Lisa graciously left out is that she and other adult stewards implicitly agree to be the partners in this equation who do the dirty work and supply the stick. And that is actually to say, to carefully and thoughtfully provide the context, the discussion, the extended care for the young reader, so that my book and I are freed for the moment to just do the playing. So my sincere thanks go to Lisa and the Swim On Foundation and to the many, many more partners to this book. Booksellers, again, too many to name, but Lisa Doucette and Susie McLean at Woozle's Children's Bookstore in Halifax, Nova Scotia deserve special mention. And librarians, educators, organizers, supporters, parents, and guardians, all of whom helped When You Can Swim complete its journey safely to the young reader. Finally, this book was not originally going to include an author's note. For a time, I felt that providing external context was tantamount to an admission of failure. Or in simpler terms, if a story requires a whole other story to tell it, maybe I didn't do such a good job with the first story. What I had failed to appreciate, and my brilliant editor, Andrea, had to gently guide me to the light, was that you just get to tell two stories in one book. So many readers have connected specifically with the second story of the author's note. Not only adult readers for whom the words evoke their own relationships with swimming and activate their shared concern for the book's themes of inclusion and access, but also many young readers for whom the little boy in the photos, me begrudgingly swimming as a child, or the anecdote that my mother was once forbidden to swim, provoke their empathy and curiosity. The many diverse responses that readers have shared with me affirm, in case I was ever in doubt, that providing personal context and specificity does not impede the possibility for connection, but rather builds the necessary bridges to transit between the individual and the universal. And I wish to thank every reader who has opened your hearts to this book and crossed those bridges and arrived at places that are your own. In one case, a bridge led me back home when one reader, oops, I'm also seeing what's on the screen. I need to see my script. Don't worry, I have it as well. In one case, a bridge led me back home when one reader wrote to wonder if the photograph in the author's note of me as a child standing in the foyer of a swimming pool had been taken at Providence Center in North Point, Hong Kong, where she formerly lived. Amazingly, she had recognized the red brick stairs and white tiled walls of the apartment complex that I, before I emigrated at 6 years old with my family, also once called home. In the book, the photograph's caption reads, "Me as a child trying to enjoy a trip to the local pool." Trying is definitely the operative word. Someone is evidently at the other end of the camera, but within the frame of the photograph, I stand isolated, stone-faced, and on my own. Many years later, I no longer have to go it alone. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone. There I am. Thank you so much, everyone. Please, everyone, be on the lookout for January, February Hornbook with cover art by Jack Long. It won't be this. This is his book. Buy this book too. And all of his other books coming up. He's got some great ones I'm going to ask. So I have lots of questions. I could ask questions for the next half hour very easily, but if people, I don't see any Q&A questions yet, but as we're talking, if people have questions and they want to jump in, it would be great to hear what you're all curious about. So I will start. So I scribbled even more questions while we were talking, but I will start with the very Newbery question of how did you find out about winning the Boston Globe Hornbook Award? Let's start with Angeline.
I found out that I had won the Hornbook Award from my editor, Jess Harold. And so that's how I found out.
How about you, Jarrett?
Like Angeline, I also found out from my editor, but I was a bit perplexed. I mean, I was about to go to ALA conference and I got a text asking if I could jump on a quick Zoom because I'm also perpetually behind on my deadlines. I thought like I was in trouble. Because then everyone else popped up from my publisher started popping up on the screen. And I thought then maybe it's an intervention about my deadlines. They told me, and it didn't quite click at first. It was one of those moments where sometimes it's hard to receive good news, and it was really wonderful news to receive.
Jack, how about you?
Yeah, for me also through email. I happened to be out running an errand when I got the email. So the part that I remember, because it was kind of blurry, was getting to my car and calling my wife on the phone. And I also want to mention that there was another even more memorable moment around that first couple of days when I found out, which was when I saw the video announcement. And it starts with this introductory video, which if I'm not mistaken, includes parts filmed at the Boston Central Library.
Yes, it does.
I had visited there when in 2014, and that just brought back these memories of how I loved that library. And there's so many moments in the process of the award from June until now that you never really know which ones are going to hit, like emotionally, and that was one of those that just really hit me.
So, Jarrett, you have written many books, many children's books. You've been in the children's book industry for a while. And Jack and Angeline, you're more new. You both have other work, but you're more new to the field. How's everybody's experience been in the world of children's literature? Has it changed, Jarrett, for you? What's it been like in this world?
I mean, yeah, I mean, I suppose I received my first contract when it was a dial-up modem. So that's my benchmark for how long I've been in it. I also got into it very young, which, you know, when I had to stop because of everything with COVID, I came to the realization that my entire career was a giant trauma response, because I graduated from high school, went to art school, and started submitting my books to publishers in art school. And at any rate, I have found that it is a very cyclical industry, and there have been many moments when everyone is a little freaked out. Everyone was freaked about ebooks before there was even an iPad, because there was the desktop computers and ebooks were new. Certainly, piracy is still something that we're contending with, both piracy for free downloads and, you know, content creators reading our picture books cover to cover on very slick YouTube videos. And of course, now with AI as well. And for the reason why I maintain hope for our industry and us as creators is because of all of the people who care so much about their kid readers, you know, their kid readers. I'm talking about the librarians and the classroom teachers who will carry our books with them throughout their careers. So I guess that would be the highlight for me, is having known so many booksellers and librarians over the past 20 plus years now who have continued to champion my work, and I'll be forever grateful for them for that.
What about the more relative newcomers? How's it been for you all? Have you been surprised by anything? Have you felt welcomed? Jack, what about you?
Yeah, it's all really new, so I don't really know what to compare it with. It's been a real privilege to take When You Can Swim, which is my debut book. You know, to actually get to go on the road with the book tour and also events locally, and just really see how you know, anyone from an individual child to groups of kids to whole classrooms react to the book. And it really is, for me, going from 0 to 100 in a really short amount of time. For the longest time, I had no idea how anyone would react to any of my books. So I'm still processing. So maybe ask Angeline.
Yeah.
Sure. For me, I think that we have some strong leaders in the Native kid literature community. And so there's been a lot of support and finding of community with Indigenous authors. And I think, you know, the issue that I'm most concerned about is wanting to make sure that this isn't just a moment, but that it's part of a movement to increase representation for Native books about Native Americans and books by Native Americans.
Was Firekeeper's Daughter that was your YA debut? Is that right?
Yes, it was.
Won a lot of awards, right? I got a lot of good love. I also, as you were talking, it occurred to me that the jacket art for Warrior Girl on Earth is by Michaela Goad, who is a Boston Globe Hornbook honoree this year too, and Caldecott medalist, lest we forget.
Yes. And
yeah.
She just, you know, how an illustrator can just read an unfinished, you know, draft and come up with imagery and just to so beautifully convey, you know, the character and and the story.
Yeah. I wanted to ask the two, Jack and Jarrett, who are author illustrators, since we're talking about the art, what is that process like for you in such personal stories? I guess it's sort of it may be a two-part question, or it may be the same answer. Is it different for you to create art and text when the story is so close to you versus not so close to you, maybe? Jarrett, do you think of yourself as a character when you work on these memoirs, or how does that all work? How do you all approach it?
The odd part about writing memoir is that you do have to think of yourself as a character. And in essence, it is a different version of you, because you're sharing with what you most feel comfortable sharing. An added level, of course, because my memoir is illustrated. It's a graphic memoir. So it takes a little bit, but you do get used to talking about yourself in the third person to differentiate yourself from the character. I found that the most difficult part of illustrating both of my memoirs was finishing, because then I had to say goodbye to people again.
And when you're writing, let's say The Lunch Lady, is it a similar type of character, or because the content is so different, you approach it differently, you have a different connection to it?
It's a very similar creative process. While I'm probably most known as a graphic novelist now, my career started as a picture book author, illustrator, and the art of the picture book, as is the art of the graphic novel, and I think it's the most underrated art, is the art of the page turn and what you're going to reveal to the reader as they turn the page. So the approach of building the story with words and pictures is no different than if it's a crime-fighting lunch lady or a teenager dealing with these very heavy issues. My family will say I'm much easier to live with when it's a lunch lady book. There's still that stress of meeting deadlines. But sometimes you go through you spend a lot of days where you're in some really dark spaces when you're writing memoir. And everyone that I know who has written memoir, memoir really is a calling. And you really feel like, I feel a responsibility. And that was the impetus of first writing memoir of, I've lived this experience and I could tell the story and I could draw it. So, with great power comes great responsibility, as Uncle Ben told Peter Parker.
Many times. And Jack,
over and over again. And every couple of years he was recast for a new movie.
Different multiverses. So Jack, your picture book is not a memoir, but as you said, there's a really personal connect. You were that little boy in the photo. And you're illustrating lots of different kids, and to be as inclusive as possible in the story of who all can swim. What was that process like? How did you find your characters?
I think there is a way in which, as I was describing earlier, that I'm not especially a strong swimmer, or even someone who, I guess, identifies themselves by swimming. So even as I was collecting ideas and vignettes for the story, I did a lot of it while I was out on a hike, and I just happened to see something that I wanted to jot down in my notebook or make a sketch of. But at the same time, I was also looking and observing other people swimming. So this book for me was very much about observing, turning outward to observe. So as I was thinking about the characters who would take up these different scenes and be the swimmer that's featured on the page, it never really crossed my mind that, I'm replacing my own experience with an avatar who's doing it. It always seemed just like, yeah, I'm casting in a way these individuals for the pictures. I don't know if that answers the question, but it was, I think while I was thinking about everything that's in the author's note, what I said about how they're actually two stories, you know, kind of made more and more sense in retrospect, because the 32 pages, sorry, it's not 48, I can't remember how many pages we used, was one book, and then a story about how I initially didn't like swimming, had my own anxieties and hangups about swimming were another. So they kind of intersect in a non-literal way.
We have a couple of questions in the Q&A. One is, thank you to you all for what you do, and Friday afternoon, for who you are and what you do. Thank you for who you are and what you do. Know that you change lives and sometimes even save them. I'd like to know two things. Who do you write and draw for? And what's your reason or purpose for writing and drawing? That's a question from Christina Dorr. Who wants to go first on those very easy, small questions? Very superficial questions.
My favorite color is red. I'll jump in, and I'm going to be very interested in seeing how much overlap we have here. I write for the kid that I was because of the kids that are. And I was thinking about what I could have really used as a young person. And that's my North Star. That's what I drive for.
I write the books that I wished I could have read as a teen. I write for my children. I write for former students and my nieces. I write for the teens in my community and for the non-Native teens that go to school with Native students.
And I write for, I don't know, it kind of varies with each story, you know, the fine differences. I can actually talk more in terms of the illustration or the book as a whole. I was a visual artist who spent a long time struggling to find a medium. I loved art, but I just couldn't figure out what to do. And as an adult, seeing a couple of really impactful children's books were kind of my, you know, I'd gone to art school and kind of become jaded and all that. And seeing a couple of really beautiful children's books, those were my first experiences I'd had in a long time that were truly moving and impactful, and even an aesthetic experience. So when I'm making a children's book, you know, I wouldn't mind if that was the experience that a kid had with one of my books, is that it's one of their first experiences of remembering, you know, of all the books that they've read, something that is, you know, like a private gallery for themselves, that they had this experience with art at a very young age.
Well, it's so interesting too, because all of you are writing and illustrating for sort of one level of audience. So Jack, your book is a picture book, which we associate normally with young children. Jarrett, yours is a graphic novel, which is, you know, it can be middle grade, it can be many different things, but it's, you know, middle grade, high school-ish. Angeline, your book is YA, but I can see lots of different kids. None of these books, maybe the YA, but not, you know, none of the books really fit into, oh, this is a picture book, it's just for babies, or this is, you know, this is middle grade, and so once you're in high school you don't want to read it anymore. And you know, these are books that really can be returned to, and of course adults would enjoy any of these books at any age. So you really do that very well, all three of you.
Thank you.
I have at least 3 questions in the Q&A for Angeline. One of them is from my mom, so I'm going to mush them all together, and then you can either answer all of them or pick your favorites. And I can also repeat questions if you'd like, but so I'll just go in order. One is it's from Allie. I love your book so much. I'm wondering, how did you decide on the time periods that you set your 2 books, which are different time periods, different generations? I would have been in Perry's class in high school, so it was so fun to see all the references you included that were familiar to me. Thank you for your amazing work. Is question one. Question two, is there an extra sense of burden or responsibility when you are representing the pain of a cultural loss? Which I guess can be a question for anybody, but I associate it most with Angeline's book. Oh, yes, my mom did specify that was for Angeline. And the third question is, you had different, this is a good question too. You had different adult characters supervising Perry during her internship, and the reader may not immediately know who is the good guy and who is the bad guy. Did you know who was who when you started the book? Any of those you'd like
to first question, the time frame. So Firekeeper's Daughter was set in 2004, and that's because that's when methamphetamines just exploded across the country. And I also needed GPS technology. We didn't have smartphones then. And so if the story is about, someone going missing, we needed to be able to make sure that they didn't have a trackable smartphone. So, and then 10 years later is Warrior Girl Unearthed. So just knowing that the 6-year-old twins that we meet in Firekeepers, that they're going to be 16 in my second book. So I always knew that that was kind of the time frame that I wanted to work with. The question about, can you repeat part of the second and third portion is where I'm.
It went away. Do you feel an extra responsibility or burden when you're handling the question of the pain of cultural loss?
I do. And I feel a responsibility to show that we're more than our loss and trauma. It's really important that people enjoy the story, the humor, the sense of connection, the way that elders play such a vital role in the stories. Those are the things that are, any story I tell is going to have that. That's what's in my community. But focusing on joy, and that's important to me with that.
All of your characters are it's not just your main characters. Every single character you can see them. They're just so vivid. And then did you know who the good and the good guy and the bad guy, good guys, bad guys, did you know from the beginning?
I knew who one good guy was. I knew who one of the bad guys was. But like everything, I also discover villains along the way. A lot of times, many secondary characters will get a turn at being a villain, and the scene either works or it goes into for rewrites. So I like that part of seeing. Sometimes the villain will just kind of spring into being, and I find that interesting.
I'm curious, were you all readers as children?
Yes, very much.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't think I was much of a reader. I have one of the beauties of being able to do these events virtually is I have my favorite childhood books, and this was my end all be all as a kid.
Oh yeah, sure.
Mouse and the Motorcycle. but a lot of the reading I was doing wasn't considered real reading, because I was reading a lot of comics. So I imagine I would have been a much more confident reader if the reading that I was really excited about. I often tell students that to understand that a comic is not a genre, it's a format. So you might have a format that you get excited about, you might have a genre that you could be excited about, and absolutely celebrate that. But of course, don't let that stop you from reading other books. So my other favorite, which I never owned this copy, I only got it from the library over and over again, but I bought a reissue of the original Anne of Green Gables, which was historical fiction, which was not something I normally would have thought to pick up. But I guess for me, the answer is so complicated, right? Because I was reading a lot, but it wasn't it wasn't validated.
Jack, what about you?
Yeah, there's a little overlap between Jarrett's response and mine. Reading for me, I can certainly remember going through all the phases of being a kid and an adolescent and being a boy. So you were discouraged or encouraged to read at certain times of different materials. So, there were times when I was a voracious reader, and then times when I didn't read at all. But as a picture book creator now, I think about that time, when I was in elementary school and reading. And one of the most interesting things that I've kind of remembered is that, to me, it's so important to make this perfect book and to put kind of my heart and soul into it and make it beautiful and all these things. And I obviously believe in that. That's why I'm doing the work I'm doing. But as a kid, sometimes you just happen to read something because it's available. I remember when I was a kid, in my room at a bookshelf, I didn't have it wasn't for want of books, but it was a modest kind of collection of random books on my bookshelf. And I had this one book that was an autobiography by Edgar Martinez, who is a baseball player for the Seattle Mariners. And I wasn't even into baseball, and it wasn't an especially artfully written book, but I just kept reading it over and over again to the point where I still remember I had that book. So on the days when I'm feeling pressured to, make something that's, pure gold, I just remember that sometimes it's a very random, as Jarrett said in his speech, kind of a random chance of time and space that a kid happens to find the solace they need in a book that they read over and over again, and you can't necessarily force that to happen.
Angeline, do you have specific favorites that you remember? You were very quick to say yes. I know I don't want to put you on the spot if you don't, but were there titles that you go back to over and over that you remember fondly specifically?
Oh, Robert Cormier, I Am the Cheese. That I reread it recently, and then reading some of Lois Duncan's books that I loved how she always had kind of a thriller, something unusual about the storyline. I also wanted to say that I get a lot of my I do a lot of reading, but I also listen to a lot of audiobooks. My father was a truck driver, and so we'd been listening to books on cassette tape. And I'd like to give a shout out to Nick Brooks, my fellow honoree, that his book, Promise Boys, the audiobook is phenomenal. It's a full cast, 30 cast members. Just such a quality production, and it brings the story to life in just such an exciting way. So I'm just a huge fan of audiobooks.
Yeah, same here.
Jarrett, I have to ask, have you read Anne of Green Gables out loud with any of your children?
I haven't.
It's tough. That Matthew chapter is tough.
I reread all of a bunch of Beverly Cleary's books, and it's just what a remarkable person, because they really hold up. They very much hold up, and in every way possible.
Well, we have 5 minutes left, so if anyone I have more questions. If other people have last minute questions that they want to get into the chat, put them in, please. I will ask a couple and see if any more come in, but I have two. Which one do I want to ask first? Well, I'll ask this one first. Do your characters, you may have already sort of touched on this, but do your characters speak to you? Do you hear them?
I mean, me technically, yes, because I am my character. So I'll sit this one
out. Yeah. And for me, my main character, Perry, she, whispered in my ear and said, I stole everything they think I did, and even stuff they don't know about yet. And I just was fascinated by the idea of the 16-year-old girl sitting in a police station waiting for her parents to pick her up. And she's thinking to herself, how did it come to this? And so I listened to the characters that are speaking to me, and it served me well.
So did you then have to figure out, or did you know going in, oh, well, this is the general thing that I want to write? Or you heard that and then you went from there?
It just all came together, just hearing the voice and remembering an obscure tweet that I had read like a year before that talked about Indigenous Lara Croft as a movie idea. And just that whole, like, reverse Indiana Jones. These items do not belong in museums. And yeah, so things just came together. Yeah.
And Jack, you talked about the hearing the voice a little bit differently when as an excited child. But that was a layer that was brought to the story a little bit later. Is that right?
I suppose so, yeah. I think I didn't hear that initially, but as I was reading it, I kept yeah, I don't know where that was. I just know that when the voice actor Shannon Tyo read it out, and it's not like she did that voice of a second grader describing an animated movie. There was just this undercurrent of urgency and impatience even that she read with for certain scenes that was just so endearing and exactly what I was hearing in my head. But it's also interesting that I don't literally hear it in my head, and I'm fascinated by authors because novelists or writers of longer pieces, they're describing processes that for me as an author illustrator I don't have necessarily access to. For me, it's a lot of picturing things fully formed in my head. And sometimes I'll picture it and I'll spend the rest of the time I have trying to reach it, but I never do. So whatever I picture in my head is always the thing that didn't actually make it onto the page, and I'm just trying to do my best.
And here's an audiobook fun fact: is Shannon Tyo, who narrated Jack's book, is also one of the voice performers on the Sunshine audiobook as well.
Nice.
Oh, ooh, and we could spend a whole hour talking about graphic novels and memoirs and comics to audio format, because that's just really fascinating. When it's done well, it's really amazing. But we won't. Maybe another time.
Let me know. I'll be there.
Yeah, no, it's very interesting.
You can attend one of Jarrett's many talks. I really love that today.
Thank you.
I also wanted to point out, of course, that story times with librarians and with families, and a picture book is what you've created or what somebody has created, but then the interpretation when somebody is reading it or performing it, and if it's with one child, if it's with many people, it really offers a lot for people to bring their own take to it. So thank you. Okay, I've got one quick Angeline question, which seems to be like it's a yes or no. Are you, Angeline, I'm wondering if you've read Fortune's Bones? Is
no
the question. Okay. Okay, so now I have to ask the question that came from the very, very beginning, which everybody wants to know, is what are you working on now? What's coming out next?
I'm working on my third book, and like my second, it will be connected, writing my community, but I always like to have a new main character, but you'll see a lot of familiar faces.
Great. Do you know when it's coming out?
I'm working on
spring of 2025.
Go
for it, Jarrett.
Okay, so I'm working on a whole bunch of things that I can't really get into, but they're all graphic novels. Some might be graphic memoir, and there's some stuff for the young adult audience, and some stuff for the younger audience, and some stuff for even a younger audience.
Intriguing. Jack, what about you? Other than your Hornbook cover for January, February 2024, everyone should subscribe.
I've had the honor and the nightmare of doing 5 books in 3 years, thereabouts. So my second picture book just came out in October. It's called The Words We Share, and it's an immigrant story about a dad and her daughter and how she translates for him. A book coming out in March of next year called All That Grows, about a boy discovering the world through gardening. I'm doing a picture book biography of Yo-Yo Ma with the author James Howe of Bunnicula fame, but he also has this amazing book called Milo Walking that's either just come out or is coming out. And then after all that, returning to do my next book with next author illustrator project with Scholastic, and that is something we're still hashing out.
That's great. Lots to look forward to. Thank you all so much. Thank you, authors, illustrators. Thank you, everyone, for joining us and for making this event such a success. Please visit hbook.com for more Boston Globe Hornbook Awards coverage and lots more about the Hornbook's 100-year anniversary celebration all throughout 2024. All of the honoree speeches are there on hbook.com, and we will archive this talk, and it will be up on the website in the next couple of days. So thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you.